The 20 habits that hold you back from the top, in which we identify the most annoying interpersonal issues in the workplace, and help you figure out which ones apply to you. Chapter 4. The 20 Habits. Knowing what to stop. As a 10-year board member of the Peter Drucker Foundation, I had many opportunities to listen to this great man. Among the myriad wise things I have heard Peter Drucker say, the wisest was, we spend a lot of time teaching leaders what to do. We don't spend enough time teaching leaders what to stop. Half the leaders I have met don't need to learn what to do. They need to learn what to stop. How true. Think about your organization. When was the last retreat or training session you attended that was titled, Stupid Things Our Top People Do That We Need to Stop Doing Now? When was the last time your CEO delivered an internal talk, designed to motivate employees, that focused on his negative traits and his efforts to stop his destructive behavior? Can you even imagine your CEO or immediate supervisor admitting a personal failing in public, and outlining his efforts to stop doing it? Probably not. There are good reasons for this, largely aligned to the positive tone and fast-forward momentum organizations try to maintain. Everything in an organization is designed to demonstrate a commitment to positive action and couched in terms of doing something. We will start paying attention to our customers rather than stop talking about ourselves. We must begin to listen more attentively rather than stop playing with our Blackberries while others are talking. Likewise, the recognition and reward systems in most organizations are totally geared to acknowledge the doing of something. We get credit for doing something good. We rarely get credit for ceasing to do something bad. Yet they are flip sides of the same coin. Think of the times you've seen colleagues go on a sales call and return with a huge order. If they're like the salespeople I know, they'll come back to the office brandishing the lucrative sales order, and regaling anyone who will listen with a blow-by-blow account of how they turned the prospect around. They will recount their triumph for months. But turn it around. What if during the sales call these salespeople added up the numbers, and realized that they were about to close a deal that actually costs the company money with every unit sold? What if they decided on the spot to stop negotiating and say no to the sale? Do they rush back to the office and boast about the bad deal they've just avoided? Hardly, because avoiding mistakes is one of those unseen, unheralded achievements that are not allowed to take up our time and thought. And yet, many times avoiding a bad deal can affect the bottom line more significantly than scoring a big sale. Think of Gerald Levin, when he was the much-admired chairman of Time Warner in the 1990s. Levin was hailed as a visionary CEO, the man who foresaw the future of cable TV and helped invent HBO, transforming Time Warner from just a combo of magazines, movies, and music into a broadcasting powerhouse. But then in 2000 Levin made a mistake. He merged the venerable Time Warner with the upstart online service AOL. It was the biggest corporate merger in the United States history at the time, promising to create a company that would dominate for decades. Of course, it didn't work out that way. The merger nearly destroyed Time Warner. The stock lost 80% of its value. Thousands of employees lost the bulk of their retirement savings. As for Levin, he lost his job, a big chunk of his net worth, and all of his reputation. He went from being chairman of Time Warner to being the architect of the worst corporate merger in the United States history. Now, imagine if Levin at any point in the negotiation with AOL had applied the brakes and walked away from the deal. Chances are, we'd never know about it. Levin would not hold a press conference to announce, "We are not merging." He'd keep it to himself, as just one more example of a bad decision avoided. And yet, if he had done this, if he had simply stopped what he was doing, his reputation and net worth might have remained intact. That's the funny thing about stopping some behavior. It gets no attention, but it can be as crucial as everything else we do combined. For some reason, we are less likely to poison our thinking this way in normal everyday life. When it comes to stopping behavior or avoiding bad decisions outside the workplace, we congratulate ourselves all the time. A few years ago my wife and I decided not to invest in a real estate venture. Too risky, we thought. Fortunately for us, though not for some of our friends, it went bust. Not a month goes by when Lyda and I, sitting around the kitchen table paying our bills, don't say to each other, "Thank God we didn't plunk our money into that scheme." We are quiet for a moment, think sadly of our friends' losses, and then resume paying our bills. This is our way of honoring the bad decision we avoided. Likewise with stopping a bad habit in our personal life. If we successfully stop smoking, we regard it as a big achievement, and congratulate ourselves all the time for it. Others do too, as well they should, when you consider that the average smoker tries to quit 9 times. But we lose this common sense in the can-do environment of an organization, where there is no system for honoring the avoidance of a bad decision or the cessation of bad behavior. Our performance reviews are solely based on what we've done, what numbers we've delivered, what increases we have posted against last year's results. Even the seemingly minor personal goals are couched in terms of actions we've initiated, not behavior we have stopped. We get credit for being punctual, not for stopping our lateness. We can change this. All that's required is a slight tweak in our mindset, in how we look at our behavior. Get out your notepad. Instead of your usual to-do list, start your to-stop list. By the end of this book, your list may grow. Shifting into neutral. We have to stop couching all our behavior in terms of positive or negative. Not all behavior is good or bad. Some of it is simply neutral. Neither good nor bad. For example, let's say you're not regarded as a nice person. You want to change that perception. You decide, "I need to be nicer." What do? For many people, that's a daunting assignment, requiring a long list of positive actions. You have to start complimenting people, saying please and thank you, listening to people more patiently, treating them with verbal respect, etc., etc., etc. In effect, you have to convert all of the negative things you do at work into positive actions. That's asking a lot of most people, requiring a complete personality makeover that is closer to religious conversion than on-the-job improvement. In my experience, very few if any people can institute that many positive changes in their interpersonal actions all at once. They can handle one at a time. But a half dozen or more changes? I don't think so. Fortunately, there's a simpler way to achieve the goal of being nicer. All you have to do is stop being a jerk. It doesn't require much. You don't have to think of new ways to be nicer to people. You don't have to design daily tasks to make over your personality. You don't have to remember to say nice things and hand out compliments and tell the little white lies that lubricate the gears of the workplace. All you have to do is nothing. When someone offers a less than brilliant idea in a meeting, don't criticize it. Say nothing. When someone challenges one of your decisions, don't argue with them or make excuses. Quietly consider it and say nothing. When someone makes a helpful suggestion, don't remind them that you already knew that. Thank them and say nothing. This is not a semantic game. The beauty of knowing what to stop of achieving the state of inspired neutrality is that it is so easy to do. Given the choice between becoming a nicer person and ceasing to be a jerk, which do you think is easier to do? The former requires a concerted series of positive acts of commission. The latter is nothing more than an act of omission. Think of it in terms of a box. Being a nicer person requires you to fill up the box with all the small positive acts you perform every day to establish the new you. It takes a long time to fill up the box, and even longer for people to pay attention and notice that your box is full. On the other hand, ceasing to be a jerk does not require learning new behavior. You don't have to fill up the box with all your positive achievements, you simply have to leave it empty of any negatives. Keep that in mind as you go through the list of interpersonal issues in this section, and determine if any apply to you. Correcting the behavior, you'll discover, does not require polished skills, elaborate training, arduous practice, or supernatural creativity. All that's required is the faint imagination, to stop doing what you've done in the past, in effect, to do nothing at all. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with us? Before we can talk about fixing faulty behavior, we must identify the most common faults. I hasten to add that these are a very specific breed of flaws. They are not flaws of skill. I can't fix that. If this were a baseball team and I was a coach, I'm not the guy to teach you how to hit a hanging curveball. That's the hitting instructor's job. I'm the coach who teaches you how to get along with your teammates, how to play nice rather than how to play baseball. Nor are they flaws in intelligence. It's too late for me to make you smarter. If that's the issue, the causative events probably occurred somewhere between birth and the time you left college. I wasn't around. And I couldn't have helped anyway. Nor are they flaws of unchangeable personality. We are not attempting psychiatry here, and we can't deliver vital pharmacological medication via book. Consult an MD. What we are dealing with here are challenges in interpersonal behavior, often leadership behavior. They are the egregious everyday annoyances that make your workplace substantially more noxious than it needs to be. They don't happen in a vacuum. They are transactional flaws performed by one person against others. They are, 1. Winning too much, the need to win at all costs and in all situations when it matters, when it doesn't, and when it's totally beside the point. 2. Adding too much value, the overwhelming desire to add our 2 cents to every discussion. 3. Passing judgment, the need to rate others and impose our standards on them. 4. Making destructive comments, the needless sarcasms and cutting remarks that we think make us sound sharp and witty. 5. Starting with no, but, or however, the overuse of these negative qualifiers, which secretly say to everyone, I'm right. You're wrong. 6. Telling the world how smart we are, the need to show people we are smarter than they think we are. 7. Speaking when angry, using emotional volatility as a management tool. 8. Negativity, or let me explain why that won't work, the need to share our negative thoughts even when we weren't asked. 9. Withholding information, the refusal to share information in order to maintain an advantage over others. 10. Failing to give proper recognition, the inability to praise and reward. 11. Claiming credit that we don't deserve, the most annoying way to overestimate our contribution to any success. 12. Making excuses, the need to reposition our annoying behavior as a permanent fixture so people excuse us for it. 13. Clinging to the past, the need to deflect blame away from ourselves and onto events and people from our past, a subset of blaming everyone else. 14. Playing favorites, failing to see that we are treating someone unfairly. 15. Refusing to express regret, the inability to take responsibility for our actions, admit we are wrong, or recognize how our actions affect others. 16. Not listening, the most passive-aggressive form of disrespect for colleagues. 17. Failing to express gratitude, the most basic form of bad manners. 18. Punishing the messenger, the misguided need to attack the innocent, who are usually only trying to help us. 19. Passing the buck, the need to blame everyone but ourselves. 20. An excessive need to be me, exalting our faults as virtues simply because they're who we are. Perhaps Machiavelli could paint these flaws as virtues and demonstrate how they function as clever counterintuitive tactics for getting a leg up on our rivals. But in the course of examining each of these irritants, I will demonstrate that correcting them is the best way to enlist people as our allies, which in the long run is a much more promising success strategy than defending behavior that alienates people. Admittedly, this is a scary pantheon of bad behavior, and when they're collected in one place they sound more like a chamber of horrors. Who would want to work in an environment where colleagues are guilty of these sins? and yet we do every day. The good news is that these failings rarely show up in bunches. You may know one person guilty of one or two of them. You may know another with one or two different issues. But it's hard to find successful people who embody too many of these failings. That's good, because it simplifies our task of achieving long-term positive change. There's more good news. These faults are simple to correct. The fix is in the skill set of every human being. For example, the cure for not thanking enough is remembering to say, thank you. How tough is that? For not apologizing, it's learning to say, I'm sorry. I'll do better in the future. For punishing the messenger, it's imagining how we'd like to be treated under similar circumstances. For not listening, it's keeping your mouth shut and ears open. And so on. Although this stuff is simple, it's not easy. There's a difference. You already know what to do. It's as basic as tying your shoelaces or riding a bike, or any other skill that lasts a lifetime. We just lose sight of the many daily opportunities to employ them, and thus get rusty. Check yourself against the list. It's unlikely, I pray, that you're guilty of all of these annoying habits. It's not even likely that you can claim 6 to 8 of them as your own. And of those 6 to 8, it's also unlikely that all of them are sufficiently significant problems that we have to worry about. Some are going to be more serious issues than others. If only 1 out of 20 people says that you have an anger management issue, let it go. On the other hand, if 16 out of 20 say it, let's get to work. Whittle the list down to the 1 or 2 vital issues, and you'll know where to start. In that sense, my job is to show you how to do it. It's little more than teaching people to use their positive skills rather than expose their negative flaws. What could be simpler than that? The higher you go, the more your problems are behavioral. There's a reason I devote so much energy to identifying interpersonal challenges in successful people. It's because the higher you go, the more your problems are behavioral. At the higher levels of organizational life, all the leading players are technically skilled. They're all smart. They're all up to date on the technical aspects of their job. You don't get to be, say, your company's chief financial officer, without knowing how to count, how to read a balance sheet, and how to handle money prudently. That's why behavioral issues become so important at the upper rungs of the corporate ladder. All other things being equal, your people skills or lack of them become more pronounced the higher up you go. In fact, even when all other things are not equal, your people skills often make the difference in how high you go. Who would you rather have as a CFO? A moderately good accountant who is great with people outside the firm and skilled at managing very smart people? Or a brilliant accountant who's inept with outsiders and alienates all the smart people under him? Not a tough choice, really. The candidate with superb people skills will win out every time, in large part, because he will be able to hire people smarter than he is about money and he will be able to lead them. There's no guarantee the brilliant accountant can do that in the future. Think about how we perceive other successful people. We rarely associate their success with technical skill or even brainpower. Maybe we say, they're smart, but that's not the sole factor we attribute to their success. We believe they're smart in something else. At some point we give them the benefit of the doubt on skill issues. For example, we assume our doctor knows medicine, so we judge him on bedside manner issues, how he tolerates our questions, how he delivers bad news, even how he apologizes for keeping us cooling our heels too long in his waiting room. None of this is taught in medical school. We apply these behavioral criteria to almost any successful person, whether it's a CEO or a plumbing contractor. We all have certain attributes that help us land our first job. These are the kind of achievements that go on our resume. But as we become more successful, those attributes recede into the background and more subtle attributes come to the fore. Jack Welch has a PhD in chemical engineering, but I doubt if any problems he encountered in his last 30 years at General Electric were in any way related to his skill at chemical titration or formulating plastics. When he was vying for the CEO job, the issues holding him back were strictly behavioral: his brashness, his blunt language, his unwillingness to suffer fools. He did not pick up these issues back at the University of Illinois Chemical Engineering Labs. General Electric's board of directors didn't worry about his ability to generate profits. They wanted to know if he could behave as a CEO. When people ask me if the leaders I coach can really change their behavior, my answer is this: as we advance in our careers, behavioral changes are often the only significant changes we can make. Two caveats. First caveat, in this book, as we go through the pantheon of personal flaws that none of us is immune to, I don't want readers to think that the people I work with are bad people. To the contrary, they're not. They are outstanding people, invariably in the top 2% of their organization. But they may be held back by a personal failing or two that they either do not recognize, B, have not been told about, or C, are aware of but refuse to change. Keep this in mind, because at times it will seem like I spend my days working in corporate purgatories populated exclusively by psychopaths, misfits, and jerks. Look around you at work. My clients are no different from the most outstanding people in your organization. Actually, they are no different from you, except perhaps in one sense, unlike many people, they accept their flaws and have made a commitment to getting better. That's a significant difference. Second caveat, in the course of going through the following list of common flaws, you may recognize yourself. That's me, you'll say to yourself. I do that all the time. I had no idea I was coming across that way. The chances that you'll get a little nudge of self-recognition here are fairly high. The chances that you'll admit it's a problem are less high. The chances that you'll take corrective action to mend your ways are even slimmer. But even if you were the extraordinarily enlightened, open-minded individual who could cop to all this, I'd still say we are getting ahead of ourselves. You are not ready to change yet. For one thing, I'm a little skeptical of self-diagnosis. Just as people tend to overestimate their strengths, they also tend to overrate their weaknesses. They think they're really bad at something at which they're only mediocre or slightly poor in an F, when they're really a C-. In other words, they see cancer where a professional would see a muscle pool. So let's hold off on self-diagnosis. More important, even if the diagnosis were correct, say, you are a chronic interrupter, you cannot be sure that it's a serious problem to other people. It might be a personality tick to your colleagues, a foible they tolerate. But if it doesn't bother them or affect their opinions of you, or isn't holding you back at work, you can ease up on yourself at least on this issue. We'll get to picking the right thing to fix soon enough in Chapter 6. But first, let's be clear about what the interpersonal challenges really are. Habit number 1: winning too much. Winning too much is easily the most common behavioral problem that I observe in successful people. There's a